Hi, and welcome to Speakers on Edge. We're doing 15 minutes of fame where we have voices of vision sharing messages that matter. And today, my guest is Lida. Lida, who are you?
That's a great question. I am someone who loves reading and making quilts, and I'm also a very avid Ironman distance triathlete. And I'm a wife and mom of two fur babies, kitties. Um, I have a bit of a snarky, probably questionable sense of humor, but I get just enough laughs to think I'm funny. But I know that you're really trying to get to who am I in my heart, and what motivates me. And my energy force comes from my heart. And I am someone who cares deeply about you, about people, about making a difference. I'm an endless hopeful person, and I'm always looking for the good in the situation and believing in the potential for something better. So that's the current version of myself because there's been many versions of me.
Yeah, I understand there's usually many versions of a lot of us. I mean, I love that. I love your story so far.
Thank
How did you
you.
how did you how did you get there? What were some of the versions of you?
Yeah. So as you might suspect, it did start when I was a child and things don't weren't always so positive, and I certainly wasn't a very hopeful person. There was a lot of trauma that included my father being an alcoholic. My stepmother was frequently physically and mentally abusing myself and my sister. And I know that all trauma leaves an imprint um, on each of us, but I believe the childhood trauma is especially powerful because as children we don't have or haven't developed a sense of who we are, so much of our identity and belief system is shaped by the people around us, and we carry those beliefs into adulthood, and it's those beliefs that we feel are true about ourselves, and it shapes the way we think from who we are to what we deserve and what's possible for us in our lives. So I
And
have
what belief? Yeah, sorry, what belief were you carrying that into your let's go early 20s, because you're not really a child anymore, but you're still young enough to be a child, really.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm 63, so I consider myself young at heart still. And the belief that I carried through to probably almost as late as my 30s, mid 30s, was a sense of self-hate. There was constant negative chatter to myself about I'm not enough, I'm not worthy of being loved, I'll never change because I tried and failed, right? Um, I had this sense of I was unworthy of success or happiness, and I rejected people who saw great things in me. Like, interestingly enough, as a kid, I was always commented about my eyelashes. Like, I had beautiful eyes and eyelashes. And I would shrink and shrivel when somebody complimented me. Um, and I just felt a huge amount of shame and guilt about what went on in my family because growing up in the 60s, it's not like growing up today where child abuse was not a thing that was talked about. You know, you just lived with it in your household. And people weren't trained to recognize symptoms. And so to the outside world, I was just this happy kid who smiled and laughed all the time, but in reality, I was everything but that.
And look at you today. I mean, this was just one part of the journey, but it sounds like you've done quite a lot of healing work. Can you go into sort of a bit of detail about what made you decide to transform yourself, rewrite who you are?
Yeah, and I'll start off saying that I think that we are always on a journey. Our sense of self is always challenged, and so it never stops. So for me, it wasn't about knowing who I wanted to be because I didn't know what that even looked like. I wasn't a child that dreamed about being like a doctor or an astronaut or having all of these ambitions and getting married and visualizing what I looked like in my wedding dress. I mean, that's not where I started from. I started from a point of saying, I don't want to be like this. I don't want to be like my stepmother, and I don't want to be like my father. And I didn't know how to do that. But slowly through journaling and reading became very important in my life because it gave me an avenue to sort of understand and hear stories from other people and what might be a normal way of doing things because I didn't have a sense of normalcy. So I started my journey knowing what I didn't want to be like, but I didn't know who I was. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense because we often, when we're going on this healing journey, we don't know what we actually don't know. And
Yeah.
the big thing that we usually don't know is what we want, because we have this ego within us that wants this, but the reality is our heart wants that.
Yeah. And that's it's a huge part of believing in ourselves. So I'm going to ask you a strange question, so just bear with me. Do you have a dog?
No, I have a cat.
Okay, but do you know of the invisible fence concept, right? Where you put a collar on the dog and
Yep.
then they stake out the boundaries around your house, and there's an electrical pulse that goes through, and every time the dog
Yes.
gets to that line, it gets zapped, right? It goes, "Rrr," and it gets zapped. And it keeps poking through the boundaries, trying to get free, but it gets zapped. So that's what we become in our beliefs. We try and we fail, so we set these boundaries and we keep trying and
Mm-hmm.
failing. And then what eventually happens is we wind up being in the center of our own island, in our own head, going, I can't. Now, envision that dog where the owner has now removed the collar or removed the fence. He's still not trying. So we're the same way. We try and we fail and we try and we fail. And I think if we shift the perspective of who we are and that, yes, trying isn't failure, right? Failure is the first attempt in learning. It's an opportunity for us to get to know who we are. And that's what I did. I kept trying. And it was always clunky. It was messy. I would read a book and I'd be like, one of the earliest books I read was the Dale Carnegie How to Win Friends and Influence People because I didn't even have friends. I didn't even know what it meant to have friends. So when I started stepping out of my comfort zone, it was never easy. Um, it was awkward, and I didn't speak well. I and for a lot of years, I just showed up and was present, but I didn't speak. So I got very involved in country western dancing a long time ago, and I went every week, every Friday night. I would go dance, but I never spoke. I made the effort to get out, but it took a long time for me to find that voice. So it is an iterative process that a little step at a time, which is why when I started off today saying this is the version I am today, because when I asked myself the other day, who am I really had to step back and say, well, who am I today? Because I'm not that hateful person when I hated my family, that I thought people were out always for bad and never for good. I mean, now I am the opposite of that. I am compassionate. And when someone throws shit my way, so to say, or throws, bubble disrupts my little happiness bubble, I I can now separate and say, well, you know what? It's not my problem because this is your perception. And that's what was a big shift for me was
And
that I didn't have to take my parents' words that I was stupid because later on I remembered because I don't remember a lot of things is that I was a straight A student. So that didn't reconcile. How can I be a straight A student and be stupid at the same time?
and this is a really important comparison you're giving here, because when I look at my CV and the types of work that I've done in my lifetime, reason, and not just work, the other activities, my hobbies, my interests, and so on. And I look back and I go, people, when they find out all the things that I've done, they go, how could you do that? And it was simple. Everyone told me I couldn't.
Yeah. Oh, that's a huge
So I
motivator for me.
did. I
Yeah.
did. I went, well, okay, I'll do it. I've flown a plane. I've driven trucks and buses and boats and cars and motorbikes, tractors, farm equipment.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? Because, I've had friends say the same thing to me. Most of my challenges that I have for myself are around the physicalness of who we are, because I've learned so many lessons with pushing myself physically. And I sign up for some crazy things because somebody will say, "Well, Lita, you're not a swimmer." So for example, I wanted to swim a 10K swim. So that's a 6.2-mile swim. And I'm an average swimmer. I'm not great. And she said, "Well, you're not a swimmer, so why are you doing this?" And I just smiled at her and went home and signed up. I was like, "This is crazy. You're not I like I, She doesn't know to this day that I signed up because of her, but I not only went on to swim that, but I wound up swimming 7 miles. There's a lot of reasons behind that. And it was the first time my husband experienced me doing sort of an epic physical thing, and he really understood all the things that I had to do to get there. I had to create a plan. I had to execute the plan. I had to be forgiving of myself that some days I didn't feel like doing it and be okay with that. And I had to learn how to eat while treading water. Like I had to learn all these new things. And when you put all those lessons together, that's what continually grows you. So now when I'm on opportunity like this and I'm scared, I'm like, I'll just jump in. I'll just take the risk now because it never fails me. It's always an opportunity. Even if I'm critical about it, um, I still learn a lot and I continually grow from that.
How do you handle the really big, scary moments? The really big ones.
I jump in. I used to not be like that, but I'm writing a book now and I'm realizing that in every segment of my life where I progressed, like I emotionally matured even more, I took a huge leap. For example, one of the first things I did was I was a through hiker of the Appalachian Trail, which is a foot trail that runs from Georgia, um, from Virginia to Maine, which is about 2,100 miles. And I'd never camped and I never hiked. I just went and did it. Um, and in that journey, I learned my strength. And so I think for me, because it was such a positive result, that I continued to just trust that whether I succeeded or failed, if I didn't take the risk, I wouldn't know. Like I'm always saying, if you don't ask, you won't know. If you don't do, you won't know.
You're giving us a number of messages that matter today. Absolute messages that matter. From yes, you can. If
Absolutely.
you don't ask, you're not going to get. When you're scared, believe in yourself and do it. And whether you succeed or fail isn't the end goal. The end goal is actually the journey and the growth that happens on that journey.
Yeah. And for people who are afraid and don't believe in themselves, the message that I want to send those people is that I believe you in you. I know you can. And sometimes when we don't have enough self-worth, and this happened for me, people showed me because they believed in me. And when I can walk away from that and say, I didn't even believe in myself and they believed me, that was sort of another shift. So to the listeners out here who are saying, I can't, I've tried and I failed, I believe in you. I know you can.
And I believe that our message that matters today is, if you don't believe in you, there's always someone who will.
And
Lida, you've
you
been
find that right person, they'll prop you up. You'll succeed.
exactly. How can people find you?
The easiest way to find me is on a website called Dreaming It, Doing It. You'll find
Wow.
all the information for me.
And
It does
what's the actual URL?
dreamingitdoingit.com.
Excellent. And we'll also have
DREA.
your go
Yeah,
for
and
it.
the other website is a Head to Toe Coaching. That's my business name, but Dreaming It, Doing It is a mission. I'm taking on 6 million reasons to accomplish your dreams and chase your vision. So
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being on the show today. We will also have your photo on our 15 Minutes of Fame guest page on speakersonedge.com. That's it for the show today. We've had a message that matters. Believe you can do it. We'll see you next time on the show. Bye.